I have all rights to that. I have all rights to that, so I said no.
Copyright?
Yeah. You see the little signature? It's fine print.
He's gonna go around the neighborhood right now.
You want to show it? You sure?
Yeah.
I'm just going to present it.
No, don't give me any credit. I don't want to be. I'm anonymous.
You know I am. That one is mine.
That's yours?
Yes.
Hey there. Good. How are you doing, sir? You too.
I got to be honest. When you're uttering all these words of profundity up there, I can't hear it down last year, so I have a hard time hearing you. I have to get a replay from it. That's okay. Nothing you can do about it.
I was eating the microphone last week, or trying to.
I know you're doing your best.
You know what's funny? It's like I only recently learned the park. I've been here almost 20 years. Just in the last few months, I learned.
Hello, yes, we are.
I don't pound the podium, but apparently I tap it in a way all the time that really picks up on the microphone. It's just doing that. You hear this kind of constant thumping.
Also, how's it looking?
There's nothing new.
Did they vote on that resolution last week or discuss it?
So last week was just the agenda of the meeting where they kind of
So what are we going to do tonight?
I don't really have a part in that, but they're going to be discussing good
But you're pretty good up there. I like your question.
changes from last week.
I can't hear a word they're saying either.
You're in the crowd, George. Joe's bringing that how the cowboys.
Yeah, he's gonna pull the discussion, this guy, having it around. I'm trying to hold off on cleaning my car.
It might be a little while.
Have we got any special guests in here?
I think when I said that tongue in cheek, I don't think that's likely to happen, because I think I said that tongue in cheekly on my first discussion online with them. I said I feel like y'all should at some point come to talk about it, but I said we'll consider that, but I mean, take that.
Yeah, submit. Yeah.
I'm used to like courts and stuff, you know. How are you? Hey, David. Hey, what's going on? How are you? Hey, we saved you one. $20 more.
I'm going to attribute this to that rabble rouser, Brian.
You should sign a like a Rembrandt thing, like at the bottom.
Yeah. Would you autograph
I
it?
don't know about it.
And make it limited edition, make it like 1 of 4 or something.
Limited edition.
Graffiti.
discuss the cell tower issue tonight.
Madam Clerk, are we clear? We are. All righty. We'll call this meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. We'll begin the evening with a moment of silence, and may I kindly request that we observe during our moment of silence a time to remember the lives lost on September 11, 2001, and honor the bravery of those who responded during that tragic day. Thank you. Okay, if you all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, we'll move into the public comment period. Just to give a heads up before we begin, everybody has 3 minutes. Just another heads up, because we're starting to get into a habit of this. It's not a forum or conversation with council, and council's not required to respond, although they may if they want to, but they're not required to. When you take the floor, please say your first and your last name and your address, and make sure to speak directly into the microphone so everybody can hear. And with that, we'll get started. We have, I can't read this last name, but Mr. Larry at 230 Windsor Forest Circle.
Larry Catron.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, members of the council, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak once again. My name is Larry Catron of 230 Windsor Forest Circle.
Thank you.
What I'm here today, my theme is I want to present some pictures to you folks involving these cell towers, different shapes, different sizes, some standalones and some covered by, like utility poles and so on and so forth. Because we talk about it, but we never see it, and they're not very, very pleasant. I mean, you could even try to cosmetically put them into a utility pole, but you still can't put, lipstick on the pig. Here's a few pictures. I also have a binder that I'm passing out to the folks that are back here. This is going to include these same pictures. I'm going to have a binder for you guys for the record. And it's just various types of signs, various types of poles, and as you can see, they're like within feet and inches of people's houses. They're not very nice aesthetically. They're going to kill property values, and there are definitely health concerns with it. So here's a picture. I'll spin around and show you guys, but it's going to be in line. You guys can see the same picture that I have here. And I'll submit this here for the record.
Sure.
Over to you.
To Madam Clerk, please. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know, like I said, Crown Castle has not been very cooperative unless we get new information from Eric. Windsor Forest is resolved. We're not going nowhere. It's a nice little display of signs. If you come through the neighborhood, we're committed, and we just, appreciate you guys being on board with us as constituents to, the town council. And once again, thank you for your time.
We thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Alrighty, next signed up, we have Mr. George Binge. George, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Just a brief personal mention, Mayor, that it's, I see your mom almost 3 or 4 times a week out walking the dogs through our neighborhood.
Hey.
And I would hate to see the day ever come when she's walking your dogs through right under the glare of one of these signs. Because right now, I always speak to her and wave to her. She's such a wonderful lady, and I'd hate to have her outside walks tarnished in any way by these cell towers, because she'd be walking directly under them, a lot of times per week. Anyway.
And I agree, and I think she's wonderful too. You gotta make sure that's on the record.
Okay, yeah, that's on the record. What I do want to have on the record is I wanted to, I'm here as a representative of all the people who put so much work and effort into this, none of whom want any credit for it, just because they're modest. They're modest and they're working behind the scenes. to further our effort. And this is are the signs have gone up throughout Windsor Forest neighborhood in the last week. And I'm dying to mention the names of the people who are responsible for it, but they insist that they want no credit for it. So, you know, that's the kind of people that we are here in Windsor Forest. We're modest, hardworking, God-fearing, good people. So we really appreciate your support in our fight against these horrible cell towers. But this is, if you drive through our neighborhood, this is what you'll see in many cases. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We don't have anybody else signed up for the public comment period. However, is there anybody else that wishes to speak before we move on? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Council, any corrections, additions, or deletions to the minutes provided? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Make a motion?
We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 2, updates from council, if there are any. Any updates? All righty. Moving on to item number 3, the consent agenda. However, there is no consent agenda. So we'll move on to item number 4, the resolution restricting location of small cell wireless facilities. Mr. Manager, the item's you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So last week, I presented a draft resolution, which is, it's a policy statement for you all to a little more specifically articulate a position on small cell wireless facilities going up in Fletcher, potentially. So we took a good look at this, wanted to specifically mention that if we could steer away within there any facilities near residential structures. And, you know, we started out just talking about subdivisions where the utilities are buried underground, and you made some revisions from last week, and it's updated in the version that you have in your packet. But just goes on to kind of articulate that the aesthetic concerns, the potential health concerns if they're in close proximity to residential structures, and then your desire to steer them to non-residential areas is kind of the, you know, punchline at the end of the resolution there. And I just also wanted to let you know, Eric and I continue to stay in communication with Crown Castle, which is the company that has been working on trying to analyze and identify areas. They haven't made any final plans. We've had a conference call with them, with several officials, and then they've been talking about doing an in-person meeting. I don't know if we were going to go out in the field or they were just going to come by town hall and show us more information. That has not been set up yet. We're looking at, well, actually this week we were anticipating them contacting us, but Eric and I at this point haven't heard back from them. So if you adopt this resolution, we will send it to them. The Crown Castle officials will send it to our state legislative delegation, because we've been keeping them aware of this, because the authority to do this in municipal right-of-ways came from a bill that was adopted back in 2017. And I don't think hasn't received a lot of attention, because the companies, or I don't know if Crown Castle's maybe not the only one doing this, but they're certainly a very large firm. They're I think just now getting in earnest to really analyzing, identifying, testing locations where this could work. And so, it's happening. I also shared with some other local government managers, colleagues at a Land to Sky managers meeting about what we're hearing from our community here. and that, council was considering doing this resolution, and some of them are interested in getting a copy, because that just said it's coming, and, you're probably going to have people who would prefer it not be in their neighborhood. And where does it go? Hopefully it'd steer it towards more commercial, institutional areas. For example, maybe along Highway 25. It's just one example. But they got to do their testing of their equipment and signal, and it's all with this rollout for 5G, and I don't know if it's just 5G, but they're working to get cell reception strong for all of us because of all the data usage that's going on. So.
Well, I think it's a well-written resolution. Seemed like council was on board last week. I assume we still are. And Mark referenced Land of Sky, and just for the public's knowledge, Land of Sky is a council of government that embodies 4 counties, Henderson, Buncombe, Transylvania, and Madison counties. So the municipalities are members, and the counties, I remember, all get together and talk about the issues. So we're talking about it on a regional level now. And he shared that it was with the managers, and I'm a member of the Land of Sky board, so I'll be sure to share it if we pass it this evening with the other elected officials when I go to the next Land of Sky board meeting. And again, I can't stress enough, Mark touched on this, I know everybody wasn't here last week. We're a Dillon rural state, so all the power that we do or don't have comes from the state, the General Assembly. So the reason they can do this is because they passed that legislation that lets them do it in the right of way. And we can do this resolution, and I think everybody's on board here, and we don't want it to happen. We're on your side, speaking for everybody. We're on your side. But the fact of the matter is, I really stress that the court of public opinion matters. I think you all need to reach out to your state legislative delegation, so Senator Moffitt and Representative Balcom, neither of whom were a part of this bill, reach out to them about your thoughts on this. So what we submitted in the record today at the book, make sure they have that. Make sure they know your comments as well, or else this potentially has the right to continue going unless this legislation changes. Any discussion from council?
Mark, I appreciate the changes that were made. I like the language a little bit better than the first one, and I appreciate that.
I agree. That's good. All righty. With that being said, is there a motion to approve the resolution R-23-06?
Make a motion?
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of approving the resolution say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All righty, moving on to item number 5, the discussion and possible approval, a request for release of performance bond for Phase 3 Sycamore Cottages. Mr. Rufa, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This next item we spoke a little bit about last week at the agenda review meeting, and this is in regards to the Phase 3 of Sycamore Cottages, the performance bond in the amount of $114,498. This bond covered the sidewalks, street trees, and the final auxiliary parking area in Phase 3, and then all the related surveying, engineering, and CMT services. Just basically here to say again tonight that the work in Phase 3 is complete, and like we've done with previous phases, asking council to release the bond. We got representatives from the development here, but obviously unless there's specific questions, these have typically been a consent item, but just since this is the last and there's been more attention, I don't think anybody was here from the development tonight, and anybody can jump in if I'm wrong, but there are some other items that are going to be tied to a future request for takeover of the streets that we are working with the developer and their engineering firm and Public Works on, and that would be a little while before you see that request come before you. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Do we have any questions or comments?
Do you foresee any issues when we do the takeover over of the streets? And had you had an opportunity to speak to anybody from the HOA?
We've been out to the site just as of the other day and had seen where the company Tinoka has been out to start doing the corrective work on some of the issues with the cracks in sidewalks and curbing. So we've seen that beginning. There may be some issues with some ramps that might need some correction. That's all I'm aware of right now, and, you know, we'll keep in touch about it when it gets closer to the request being taken over and let you know if there's any surprises that come up.
Any other questions, comments? All righty. Thank you, Mr. Rufa. Council?
Yeah, we'll need action.
Yeah, to approve okay, do we have a motion to approve the release of the performance bond for Phase 3 of Sycamore Cottages?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Take care. All righty, moving on to item number 6, update from our police chief on the traffic enforcement efforts. Chief Terry, the floor is yours. And thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This needs to be away somewhere. Oh, maybe that all night long. Well, you guys are moving along pretty smoothly, and I'm here, I have to slow things down.
That's okay.
I was asked to talk tonight about our traffic enforcement efforts and kind of the direction the police department has been given moving forward. I recognize there's been some complaints regarding some speeding, specifically in one area on Fanning Bridge Road. I will comment that I did not receive any of those complaints. Nobody had spoken to me about it, but I do understand and recognize they have come forward through various means, and so I was asked to talk a little bit about that today. Our present strategy, what we are doing, traffic enforcement and otherwise, is very deliberate, it's very intentional. We're not sitting around on our hands waiting for someone to call and complain, and we go out and deal with that crisis, and we come back and we sit on our hands and wait for the next crisis. We have a lot of meetings from the very beginning. When I arrived 2.5 years ago, we had sat down and very intentional, very deliberate about what we should be doing and what the police department should be accomplishing. You may recall when I arrived 2.5 years ago that I sought feedback from many sources. I requested feedback from council, certainly talked to my supervisor, the manager. I talked to all the officers, and I created opportunities to be out in the community, talking to the community as well. And the number one thing we were hearing from the community is people were concerned about some of the behaviors and some of the unruly behavior and some of the disorder in nearby communities, and they were concerned about that bleeding into Fletcher, and for us starting to see that type of activity take place in Fletcher. And that was the number one thing we heard over and over and over. So certainly as part of our strategy going forward is it was to address those situations and to make sure Fletcher remained an uncomfortable place for somebody who might want to come here and might want to set up shop and then cause harm to our community, affect the quality of life, our quality of life decreases and suffers. And so that is a part of our strategy and is very intentional and very deliberate. We're not just making things up every day as we go along. We do have a plan. So before I dive right into the traffic enforcement, let me give you a little bit of statistics on present activity, kind of what we're looking at or what I expect we will see by the time 2023 ends. We will have more felony arrests in the town of Fletcher in 2023 than you've ever seen in Fletcher before. Now that could be scary, but it shouldn't be scary. It's not that crime is rampant and people just lost their mind, but you have a bunch of officers who have taken the mission seriously and their eyes are wide open and they're looking for those people that might do harm to the community, those people that are not the best interest of the community, those people that are already inclined to commit criminal acts. And so they have been addressing those issues. The majority of it is drug-related, although our detectives have done a wonderful job of following up on some of our breaking and entering cases. We've had some businesses and homes broken into, and our detectives have had a very successful rate in closing those, identifying the offenders, and arresting those. But you're going to have more felony arrests this year than Fletcher's ever had in the past because of the officers' efforts. There will be more DWI, driving while impaired or intoxicated. You'll have more arrests this year for DWI than you've ever seen in Fletcher in the past. DWI is traffic enforcement, there's no question about it, and is a significant public safety issue, and again, the officers are the ones that are making that happen. Crime continues to decline, although slowly. From 21 to 22, crime was down 9%. It's down 36% since 2019. Now, I'm not going to stand here arrogantly and suggest that the police is responsible for all that, because there are a lot of different variables when we talk about crime and disorder in our communities. And so you can't, it's very hard to put your thumb on what is actually causing the crime, but I definitely think our officers are at least playing a role in the activities they're involved in. Recently, we identified a very dangerous intersection in the community here where we were seeing multiple accidents involving injuries, and the police department got involved in researching the accidents at that intersection, and then we prepared a report and we contacted the DOT, Department of Transportation, with our findings, and as of last week we received an email that it appears they're going to take our suggestions and start to make changes at that intersection, and so we definitely think that that will lower those accidents, lower those injuries, and make our community safer. We're presently working on two different residents.
Chief, do you mind just referencing that intersection for the public?
Sure. We were talking about 25 and Old Airport Road right there at the intersection by the Eagles.
Thank you.
Some time ago, the Department of Transportation changed the configuration of the signal, and after that, we found that accidents increased significantly, so we worked with them, and now it looks like they're going to put it back to the way it was prior to the increase in accidents.
Thank you.
Good news, and again, that hasn't been done yet, we just got word on that last week. We have two homes in our community that are harmful to, well, there might be more than two homes, but there's two homes we're presently working on that is harmful to our community, and we have been working to get those people out of our community. Just last week, we being the police department, attended an eviction hearing at the Henderson County Courthouse. That's a little unusual for the police department to do. That's not something we routinely do. I would say that's above and beyond, but we recognize that this home is a problem, a safety problem. There are people there that are dealing drugs. More than one occasion, serious drugs, methamphetamine, fentanyl. And so not only are they within our community, living in our community, committing these serious crimes, but people from the outside are coming in to buy those drugs, and so they're inviting other people in that might be problematic and harmful to our community. There's also a robbery that occurred just across the line in Buncombe County, and the person responsible for that robbery stayed at this house as well. So we were working with the landlord, we've been encouraging him, and so we were at the eviction hearing last week to support him and testify on his behalf if he needed us, and that case has been continued forward. So but we are hoping that we will have some positive results in that endeavor. Speaking specifically to traffic, looking at the first 8 months of 2022, so January through August 2022, we conducted 783 traffic stops, and we issued 412 citations. 783 traffic stops with 412 citations. The first 8 months of this year, 2023, same time period, we made 1,229 traffic stops, and we wrote 564 citations. So there's 36% increase in traffic stops and 27% increase in the citations, the amount of citations issued. We'll talk a little bit more about in a few moments what those citations look like specifically. But those are the increases there. You'll also see that not everybody that gets stopped gets a ticket. And I think that's actually a good thing. I think not everybody is created equal. And our goal is voluntary compliance. We want people to comply with the law and be safe. And sometimes get stopped by the police, shook up a little bit, and pointed out what we did wrong is all it takes. Because we got good people here at Fletcher. We got very good, supportive, kind people. And sometimes that's all they need. Everybody doesn't need a ticket. There are those that think they can do what they want when they want, and hit the pocketbook is the only way to get their attention. They're out there too. But the fact that officers are using discretion and not everybody's getting a ticket, I think is a positive thing. So our officers are busy, they're productive, they're doing a very good job, and that is with 9 people in patrol and 3 detectives. That's a total of 12 people doing all that work. I've been doing this a very long time, and I can't say positively 100%, it would be pretty close, that I maybe have never seen 12 people accomplish as much as these 12 people have accomplished. So they are not sitting on their hands, they are active, the numbers will bear that out, And anybody who said otherwise could be disproved quickly.
And how many vacancies do we currently have?
And we're still fighting with the shortage. You guys are well aware of the shortages. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But we have, on paper, we're 2 short. In reality, we're 5 short. So we have 3 in training, so they're not doing anything for us as of yet, because they're not out there on their own, other with a training officer. One just started last week, so he'll be training for the next 4 months. And we have 2 that we still haven't hired. And we got 2 elsewhere in the training program that, you know, the training's done, we'll get out there. So 2 on paper, 5 reality is what we're short at the moment. So let's talk specifically about this complaint. The complaint recently was about speeding on Fanning Bridge, and I will concur there is speeding on Fanning Bridge. There's no question about it. People do speed there. But there's also speeding on Hendersonville Road and on Hooters Creek and on Jackson and Old Airport Road. There's speeding there too. I think all of these neighborhoods deserve our attention. They need to see the police there. Police needs to be in all our communities. And so I think everybody deserves some attention, but I don't think all our resources need to go to one neighborhood over the other unless we have specific reason and the data demonstrates that we have a problem that needs addressed. Like the one problem house that I told you with the eviction hearing. That's a problem house. It's been identified as a problem house. We need to do something with that. That intersection that we referred to at 25 and Old Airport Road, the data was there. That was a problem intersection. We needed to do something with that. There was more accidents at that one intersection in a year than all of Fanning Bridge. Just that one intersection in a year. It was a dangerous place, and it deserved our resources and our attention. But all communities should get police presence, and we are here to serve all of the town of Fletcher, but not just one specific area. You made mention of staffing. Typically, we're running with 2 people per shift. So you have 2 people out there to do the job. Ideally, we've talked before, the goal is to have 3. We're working towards that with staffing and hiring people. But even then, people get vacations, and sometimes they get sick, and they get their days off. And training. We are definitely invested in training, so they'll have the capabilities to do even more professionally for the town. If you got 2 people working, and one person ends up on a significant call, significant investigation, maybe they make an arrest, maybe they're down at jail in Henderson County, that means one person left in town. The realities of police work in a small community like this is, I do not want that one person doing radar when he's by himself. Because he's going to sit there, he's going to do radar, he's going to stop the cars for speeding, he's going to end up in another ward, somebody else is going to go to jail, he's going to end up in a big mess. And now he's down at the jail, and you have 0 people in the community. The number 1 priority is and has to be responding to emergencies and calls for service. We have to be available for emergencies and calls for service. So we have to constantly adjust our priorities, constantly adjust our resources to make sure that we can appropriately respond to our emergencies. And so again, if the guys work only 1 person in town, I do not want them running radar because it's not wise. It's going to set us up for further trouble when that big call comes. Over 50% of our accidents, and this is 2022 data, over 50% of our accidents around Hendersonville Highway are around 25. And that's where we spend most of the traffic enforcement, not all of it, but most of the traffic enforcement we do is on 25. The second highest intersection for accidents is Lockwood and Airport Road. In the recent letter we received reference the complaint about speeding on Fanning Bridge referred to a target enforcement we did in March, and you may recall we did do that in March, but that wasn't the last time we did it. We also did target enforcement in June. We did another week or 2 where we put officers out there and they did target enforcement, and then we've had officers out there doing radar since then, not necessarily target enforcement, but we're out there every day. But just last week or 2 weeks ago, officer was out there doing radar, and again, he had to break from doing speed enforcement on Fanning Bridge because an elderly lady was on fire. So obviously that trumped doing radar on Fanning Bridge, and he responded to that. We've talked about the staffing already. So we have 9 officers, 9 patrol officers, 3 of them being new and not radar certified to begin with. So only 6 people can do radar legally. And 3 of those are sergeants, so they're supervisors and they're training our new people. And so certainly staffing plays a role in this as well. So we can't be all things, all people, at all times. We do have to prioritize, we have to use our resources appropriately, and we have to do that every day. But let's return to the productivity numbers I talked about. I talked about the increase in traffic stops and the increase in citations issued. If we broke those down and we looked at the types of citations that are being written and traffic stops being made, more citations being written. The data on traffic stops isn't as clear, but you will see some increase in the moving violations, which would be your speeding, your red lights, your stop signs. You'll see some increase there, but that increase is very minimal. So when I talk about that 36%, 27% increase, the types of tickets that are getting written, the types of cars that are getting stopped, really does come back to that original strategy I talked to you about. They're out there looking for people that are inclined to commit crimes, people that are wanted, people that don't have driver's licenses and have already demonstrated themselves as people who make bad decisions. So the numbers do reflect that, and so I want to be transparent with that. Although the stops and the citations have increased significantly, the moving violations, speedings and such have not. I do believe there is room to rebalance that. I don't really want to lose what they're doing and what we've accomplished, but I do believe that more, what we might say for, say, traffic enforcement, speeding and stop signs and such is warranted. And I think that is a part of the long-term plan. I don't think that is something that we're just thinking of today. That's always been a part of the plan, and we've dealt with staffing issues. And I'll refer to a letter dated February 8th of this year, 2023, where we started to talk about performance measures, and I'm sure you're familiar with that conversation. We started to talk about putting together performance measures, and I put a draft proposal together for the police department, and that included increasing directed patrols, checkpoints, and saturation patrols. Those are all traffic enforcement. That's what we're talking about. Directed patrols is you need to be here on this stop sign, then on that stop sign, you need to do a radar on this street. And so back in February, we were already talking about the need to do this. Later, July 27th, a letter to all of our sergeants went out where I told them they needed to start identifying present needs and concerns in the community and proactively address them. And I gave them a couple examples, such as checkpoints and saturation patrols, that they need to be looking at doing more of those. Again, it comes back down to time and resources. I think we will get there. I think a year from now, having the same kind of conversations, you're going to see a significant difference. I think the guys are already moving in that direction. The expectation is already there, but it takes time. We got 2 people out there, and how many places to get me at once, too? Our town is small, but it ain't that small. And so we have to, constantly move our people around, and it might not, some people just, maybe their expectations are not appropriate, or they don't understand the, difficulties of the small police agencies and what we're up against. Again, emergencies and 911 calls always have to be priority over the radar. And we have to deal with reality. 2 weeks ago, I was coming to work, and I was behind there's a very slow driver, and he was, and then there was a vehicle behind him. This was on Hoopers Creek area, and the vehicle between me and that slow driver crossed the double yellow lines and went around the slow driver on these blind curves. You're familiar with Hoopers Creek, it's dangerous. And that person deserved to be stopped. That person deserved a ticket, no question about it. I was not crossing those yellow lines to pass that slow driver on a blind curve, because then when I get in an accident, hurt somebody, kill myself, I'm going to be at fault. That's not professional police service. $100 ticket, $200 maybe these days, is not worth risking our community's lives. So we do have to be smart, wise, and professional when we perform our duties. So I do think there is room to improve, and I think going forward we will do that. I think it's been part of the plan all along. But it takes time. We've got to have the resources to do it. We need training. There's a lot of things we need to do. And going back to our original strategy, we're deliberate, we're intentional, we've had the conversations. We could take all of our resources, and we could put all our resources in traffic enforcement, and then you might have some drug addict living in a tent in the backyard, or kids tripping over hypodermic syringe walking down the street, people urinating in public, and everything else. So it is a constant balance trying to decide what we need to do for our community. We need to be open to feedback. We need to be open to hear from members of the community, as we did tonight. We don't want to discount that, but sometimes it takes time to get things in motion to accomplish what we want to. I've been here not even 3 years, and so I don't even know that I've been here long enough for us to even say if what we're doing is working. I mean, it takes time to say, are we being successful? If we're not, then we'll adjust, and we'll try something new. But if we, divert our resources, for every complaint or every time somebody's upset, we'll tread water, we won't go anywhere. We'll just run from one crisis to the next, and we won't accomplish anything. So, any questions at all? I apologize. I ran up.
Well, I just want to say thank you for that presentation. I think it provides a lot of clarity to the public. But any questions, comments from council?
I'd like to say that y'all doing a great job, I feel, with all the short resources that you're working with, and also with trying to balance that, like you talked about, balance that act, trying to keep our community safe. You know, that's phenomenal. So, like I said, the resources, once we get you some more resources that you can work with, I think we can address some of these issues a little better.
Yeah, I definitely think there's room to do more, so I don't want to leave here as if I'm just being defensive, because I do think there's things we can do. We always got to be looking for what the community needs so we can get better. I will thank you for your comments. I think we got a good group of guys, and so the glory goes to them for committing themselves and doing what they do.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was blown away when I read your report. It said last month you had 29 arrests. You know, you just wouldn't expect that in Fletcher.
Yeah, you're correct, and we actually have room to slow down. I mean, what I mean by that is the guys out there are doing such a good job, the administrative part of it, we're behind. Because we got to clean up the mess, like, you know, we got the felony packets, we got to make sure stuff gets in district attorney's office. And so, you know, I wouldn't complain if they slowed down a little bit, because we're getting behind on our end, but they're doing a good job. They, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, for 12 people to accomplish as much as they're accomplishing. It's pretty amazing, because they don't have to.
Good summary.
Yeah.
I think you're doing a great job making it uncomfortable for those that shouldn't be in our community, and I think going after those drug houses, to me, is top priority. I only had one question. Is there anything as residents that residents can do to make your job a little bit easier, or anything that we can do in our own communities that that help instead of hinder?
Well, we have a very supportive community, which makes all the difference. And part of what we do is trying to maintain that. And if it's directly with traffic enforcement, because, you know, we can go out there and write a million tickets, that's easy. Writing tickets is easy. But it can also have a negative effect on your good citizens, because I've heard of communities, I've heard of other communities where, you know, the residents of that community, the locals don't get tickets, but all the outsiders get tickets. I won't do that. That's unacceptable.
Right.
If we're going to violate, if we're going to conduct enforcement and we're going to, you know, write tickets, if you violate the law and you get the ticket, it's not going to be, oh, you live here, you get a free pass, and you don't live here, we're going to pound you. I've heard of places doing that. I won't do that. So support's a big deal, and it's there. It's already there. I mean, anybody, we do get busy, but, you know, we like to hear from the citizens, and a lot of times when we have an opportunity to talk to them one-on-one, you know, they get a little bit of our perspective, we get a little bit more of the perspective, and, you know, so I guess sharing their concerns, we do need to know what their concerns are. We don't necessarily want to wait till it gets to the point where everybody's angry and it just comes off as a complaint. I guess, I mean, I'll talk to anybody. So, you know, I've made opportunities out there to engage with the community, you know, coffee with the chief, those type of things. It's usually not well intended, which doesn't bother me. I think typically when people are angry, they show up to vent that anger. But when everybody's happy, things are going well, then they don't necessarily want to waste their Saturday to come see me. And so that's okay. But I'm, you know, having open communication and just respect for each other. You know, I think you know, what they've done here today, and I don't want to take up your time, but, you know, what you see happening here today, sometimes they come up here and say things that, you know, I don't like or I disagree with, but the fact that they come in here and come up here and talk, I think is an amazing thing. I think it's the way it's supposed to be. You know, I think it's a healthy community, so I think it's good.
I would agree. It makes it better as a community here from our public.
Just one other comment with Sheila's question about what people can do. I hear this from the police a lot is, you know, don't be shy to report something that looks suspicious or unusual.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people don't do that, and then you miss something that...
Yes, thank you very much for that. We get paid to be here, whether we're sitting around doing nothing or working. And so if you see something suspicious as far as from a community standpoint, a lot of times that's what will happen is people will be like, I don't want to waste their time, I don't want to bother the police, and they don't call. And then the next day we find out something bad did happen. If there's anything suspicious you're concerned about, then by all means call. We'll come out and check it out. If it ends up being nothing, it ends up being nothing. We're getting paid the same way. So I think, and I tell the officers this, you know, occasionally, but as citizens of this country, and especially this good community, I think we need to be looking out for our neighbors. We need to be looking for opportunities to help each other and make our communities better. I think as citizens we ought to be able to do that. But as a police officer, you get paid to do that. So so we need to just do that, and we're getting actually a paycheck to do what I think we ought to do anyways. So take advantage of that. I mean, sometimes we can't, we have limitations with the law, limitations with procedures, things we can do, we can't do. The public doesn't always understand that, so sometimes they aren't happy with the service they end up getting. But by all means, you got questions or concerns, you see something suspicious, call us and we'll come out and check it out. And we'll never hesitate to do that.
I'll say one last thing, well, two more things. I will say, I think Chief does a pretty good job of providing updates on Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. So if you all don't have the time to come sit in a council meeting or have the time to watch the council meetings, that might be a good place to go to find out what they're doing and some of the updates that you provide, isn't that correct? Try to provide. And the last question, or the last comment I was going to make, you referenced performance measures, and this might be to you too, Mark, but at some point down the line when we get better at those and it's more put together and we're ready to go, it might be beneficial to make that readily available to the public so they can see that data, so they can see the things that we're doing and provide some more clarity, if it's relevant to the public, I assume.
I mean, it's in its infancy stages.
Right, it'll be on down the line.
To do performance measures, you have to have something to measure against. So right now, we're kind of creating that baseline.
Right.
And then when you add the intervention, which is another reason you maybe haven't seen us just do a bunch more corrective patrols, you need that baseline, so then when you add that intervention, you can see if you are making a difference or not.
Sure.
If you don't have that baseline, you got to create it, which is kind of where we're at now, is gathering that data so then we can add the intervention and see if it makes a positive.
Yeah.
And
I
we
think that'd
really
be
just
started
started this summer, I've been working with department heads on
Sure.
and we're in our infancy with some of these performance measures, benchmarks, but really by this summer, I wanted them to have that set up and start gathering the data. So there's not a lot of data gathered yet, because we're just kind of getting this, but there
Down
are
the line, yeah.
there are ones established, and they're putting templates together and doing that, and the police will certainly have a lot to report on
Sure.
with the activity.
Any other questions or comments? Chief, we thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
If you're worried about slowing us down, he gets a round of applause. Moving on to item number 7, your comments, Mr. Manager.
Okay, well, I don't know if anyone will clap after I talk about all this, but
Don't hold your breath.
got a bunch of things to cover, and probably the most substantive thing, and from some of the updates I had last week, I dropped some of them just in the interest of time, and I already covered it, but if people are ever interested in more on what that is, we do summary on some of these comments that I share that go in our newsletter, so that's in there if anyone wants to read more about some things. Pardon me? Oh, yeah, and the minutes, our town clerk was just reminding me, our minutes are posted relatively quickly after these meetings are held, and so there's a lot of information in there, if you're curious to look at that. We try and summarize it in the newsletter. So the first thing I wanted to mention, I emailed you last week about this, and we talked a couple months ago with the elections director. The bill that was passed this summer, I think it was in June, it was adopted, that moves the elections. We were in odd number years, and we're now in even number years, and now this transition is complicated and a little messy, and so to try and do this, the one timeline that the elections director talked to you about, Summer Heatherly, was doing the primary, and just for the public's information here, all your terms are extended by a year to get this to sync up right. So we have 2 seats that'll be up in the end of next year. But we're trying to coordinate when the filing period is, when a primary would be held, if we have to hold a primary, and then up to the general election in next November. So the elections director talked to you about the possibility of a filing period in December and then a primary in March. And I think y'all had some concerns about that, and the city of Hendersonville did as well, and some of the other municipalities that are impacted by this may as well. But that's such a long period of time from the filing all the way to the general election, even if there's a primary in between, it's necessary if you get more than 2 people filing for a seat after the filing period. So the city of Hendersonville, and I just got alerted to this Friday, and some of this is that you need to know, we're tied in a little bit within our charter and with this bill that went through about when the primary is set. And it's a little bit odd, but if the city of Hendersonville has to, if they do their primary the 6th Tuesday before the general election, we're supposed to follow suit. Well, I think the city of Hendersonville is trying to take this as an opportunity to streamline the election process and do away with the primary, the need for a primary. Anybody that files and wants to run still has that same opportunity to do that and it go to the general election. What was happening before, and we're under an election method where there's a filing period, a potential primary, but depending on how many people file for a seat, and then the general election. And if you don't get more than 2 in a seat, then there's no primary. Well, the city of Hendersonville wanted to go to, or they're trying to go to what's called nonpartisan plurality method, which is just a fancy term for the top vote getters for everyone that filed. The top vote getter out of everyone that files for a seat gets an opportunity to campaign and the election decided in the general election, and not a primary winnowing or, cutting that field down and then before the general election. So right now, and I have a copy of something just to kind of explain the 3 methods that the school government articulated well, and it's on that 1 pager there. We're that 3rd method, and I've cross-referenced it to our charter. So what Hendersonville is wanting to do, and they're under that same method too, they don't have the district election part, but they want to switch to this nonpartisan plurality method. It does away with the primary, and then the filing period, if they're able to get this to go through, would be in July, which I think most people like because that's closer to the general election, and filing in December so far in advance it's a long period of time. I'm not saying y'all have to do this or that's the way to go, but it makes sense for a lot of reasons. So they did a resolution of intent last week, and then they're going to hold a public hearing in October and then consider a ordinance in November. Thank you. And then if that goes through, then they would be under this nonpartisan plurality election method, and they would just be a filing period in July and then the general election in November. It streamlines the process. I think most candidates like it because it's not so spread out for this transition year now with that bill that's moved the elections to even number of years. The only other way to handle that would be to get a bill introduced, and it's just tough with everything that the legislators are dealing with in General Assembly right now, and I think the elections boards have a little bit hard time getting up with Senator Moffitt on some of this stuff. So if you all wanted to follow suit, and please take the time to read the material I have out here, and I'll share with the resolution that Hendersonville has just done. But if you want to do this, we got to move on it relatively quickly. And I'm going to consult with our town attorney tomorrow to kind of go over all of this probably even touch base with the city attorney in Hendersonville. So she did a lot of research on this. But you need to basically do a resolution of intent probably by the end of this month, and which would mean a special call meeting to do that. So I know we're trying to do the ribbon cutting ceremony for the courts project at the park for the 29th of September. And if that might work, and maybe you could do that in the morning, at like 10 or 11. Because the ribbon cutting, if we go through at that time, is at noon on the 29th. That's a Friday, September 29th at noon. So maybe tentatively at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
That's enough time.
That sound okay?
I won't be here.
Okay.
I'll be in Raleigh for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so myself.
Will we have them, will you be able to be here? Bob, Keith?
I might be late, I got a 8:45 eye appointment.
Or if we do it at 11, that should be enough time.
Let me ask you, Mark,
And we could do it a different day. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
logistically, if you want to do this.
Well, maybe we need to make sure that we're on board first. That's a
Yes,
discussion.
yeah.
Based on what I've read and researched, I feel very strongly at this point we should go with that plurality method. I just think it makes so much more sense than what we're doing now. I think it's kind of ridiculous asking candidates to register more than a year before the election. That's crazy, as far as I'm concerned. This would, if we went to that plurality method, you're back to talking, 5 or 6 months, which is more reasonable in my mind.
I second everything that you said. I couldn't agree with you more. As long as we can do this without the General Assembly, we don't need a bill, and we can do it by ordinance, I'm okay with it. Another question, and we were kind of talking offline about this, and we can do the plurality with the districts, then I'm fine with
I
it.
called the elections director, and her
We have to have a public hearing for
understanding
ordinance.
is that you can still have your district election.
Right.
I
Right.
mean,
It would just be a
it just
plurality.
means if you get, like, for example, one of the 2 seats that are open, if you get 3 people that file for that seat, instead of doing a primary in whatever month it would be
Right.
for a primary,
Whoever gets
those 3 are on the ballot for the general election, and that top vote getter, it doesn't have to be that simple majority, the 50%
51,
plus
yeah,
one,
yeah.
The length right there is, is a long time for somebody to run. I mean, it's almost a full year.
Yeah.
The only bad thing about the most votes, let's say if 5 people run, I don't know if 5 people ever run, is whoever gets the most votes is probably not the true representative of the citizens. I mean, it's so spread out of a vote right there, if it makes sense. That's why you always have a primary, narrow it down so the citizens get the actual elected officials that they wanted, and that could pull that away from that, if that makes sense. Or other people can run just to narrow down votes and stuff. So that could be a headache right there, and I just want to make sure that the citizens get exactly the representative that they wanted on council.
If the 29th is not a suitable day for a special call meeting, and I would prefer to have a special call meeting, when would another date be more suited?
What time is the groundbreaking or whatever you're going to talk about?
It's the 29th, that same day.
At what time?
At noon.
Well, could we do it?
Could we
Do
have
it
to?
afterwards.
Afterwards?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do it later in the
I
day.
could make that one, no problem.
You want to do it afterwards?
Yeah. You want to do like 2 o'clock or?
You okay with that, Sheila?
I am. I
Okay.
just hate that Trevor won't be here.
I
Yeah.
mean, if it
Yeah.
works for council, stuff like that, I mean, it's up to y'all. I cannot be there, I'll be in Raleigh.
We'll make sure you have the resolution of intent to see too, so you can at least weigh in on it, if not vote on it.
Keith, are you okay with that, Tom?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can work around and get to that on the 29th.
Another reason why I like this plurality method is with the primary method, I mean, we're having citizens that are running for these positions, and if they have to go through and do a whole lot of campaigning for the primary, then they have to do it again 6 months later, or a year later, or, 6 months later, when the regular election is, that's a lot of work for an individual, and I think doing it one time would work better.
It's harder on the candidate, but still, like I said, the first option right there again, if 5 people run, and you narrow it down to 2, because a lot of folks might well have voted for this other individual, A versus B, because of, there's a wide spread, if that makes sense. I just want to make sure that the citizens won't get who their elected officials they want in their office.
But I think if the candidates are only doing it once for the election, I'm hoping they do a better job of communicating with the public, their positions on things and stuff. So hopefully, the voters will be better informed in the first place.
And will this be always like this? I mean, like the December, if we decide to keep it as a runoff in the Fletcher elections, always start in December?
No.
No.
Just this one time?
Not even this time. If
we change it, the plurality.
It'll change it immediately, so.
Yeah, it would be, I mean, my understanding, we'll double check, it would be July. It would be what it would.
Well, I mean, if we didn't change it, for example, so you run for December, so every time we have an election, you have to always submit your candidacy in December.
In December.
December, every time, if we don't.
So you're asking if we don't change it?
If we don't change it,
yes.
yeah.
Every time from now on.
Right, unless you want to change that at some point.
And I'll say another benefit of going to a plurality is, I mean, it's September now. It's hard for candidates to get ready by December or make a decision. The public's not going to know, everybody's not going to know that's right around the corner. So given that July timeframe, as it always has been, I think it's beneficial.
And let's face
What's
it,
the other municipalities doing
well,
besides Hendersonville?
Besides Hendersonville.
Well, someone on the phone said Flat Rock was checking something out, and I think they were interested in doing I mean, that was my understanding. I think they're interested in checking out doing the plurality method as well. Other than that, I don't know about the others.
And you think you'll know something tomorrow? But I don't know if that's...
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to Joe Farikas tomorrow, our town attorney, and I wanted a chance to just go through, I just got the resolution of intent from Hendersonville. I wanted to just see how that looks and just cross-reference it against the general statutes. But it looks like theirs is the same election. I mean, they do something a little bit different because they don't have districts that it's pulled from. It's just top vote getters on the slate. And then I guess if there's so many, it has to go to a primary. But it's a little bit different for them in that respect. So I just want to make sure it's the right document for y'all to take action on. Make sure we don't run into something from the state, because since we have districts. And remember, you have districts, but they're not true electoral districts. You have to reside in the district, but you're elected at large. All the voters in town get to vote for that seat, not just people who live in that district. So I can check that. If y'all could tentatively hold the 29th at 2 p.m. then, and we'll send a reminder out. And if something happens, if we need to go the day before or something like that, I think we might be able to do that. I checked my calendar, and hopefully Christine's good.
It'd be nice to also hear from our citizens as well, so everyone's going to be voting. And, feedback from y'all are very, very welcome of what y'all's thoughts are. So, well, we're here for you.
We'll have to hold a public hearing, correct?
Yes, yeah, so.
There'll be a public hearing, so
Yeah, do a
everybody has a
resolution of
chance to.
intent at a special call. And all the reasons special call is just we're getting jammed up here on time. Because if you go with what she originally presented, it'd be a December filing period. And so it takes time to jump through these hoops.
Just out of curiosity, how will this all change if the legislature passes the thing they're talking about, trying to force partisan elections.
I can't answer
We don't
that
know until it
question, yeah,
happens.
until it happens, and
What was,
They're trying to force partisan elections on us.
from municipalities?
Yes.
I hadn't seen that legislation yet.
You've heard about that, haven't you?
I've heard some rumblings on it. It started with school boards, and now I've heard some of that coming to, the gist I gather, and I can't speak for all the municipalities in the state, that people are more reluctant to it than supportive, but just trying to keep some of the partisan politics out of local government.
I would be reluctant to that. So it sounds like we're good for the special call? Think so?
Yep, I mean, we're good, if that works for y'all. The next thing I wanted to mention, unless there's any other questions on that, the chief alluded to it, and I won't say much more, but the intersection improvements that DOT's doing, and that safety improvement and the left turn into Ingalls, it's gone into effect. It's mostly that time between noon and 7. They are going to make some other physical improvements to that intersection, and I talked to you all a little bit last week about it. So, and then the next thing I wanted to mention, the courts project, it's of course done, and people are using it. It's getting well used. And the ribbon cutting ceremony, we're looking to do that again on the 29th at noon, at Friday the 29th at noon. So excited to see it being used. A lot of people are using it, so that's a good thing. The next thing, sound walls, the sound barrier walls out on I-26 near Wildwood, that seems to be moving forward, and that's, letters have gone out to the impacted property. They should be getting them as we speak, and then we're doing some extra communication to make sure, hey, you're gonna get this, make sure you respond to it, and they need a simple majority affirming that. Next thing I wanted to mention, the elected officials update luncheon. You have a copy of an email from Brittany Brady. Just trying to get if you have any preference on the topics of discussion. They usually do this, it's a pretty small luncheon with usually the managers and the elected officials attend. It used to limit it to 2, but they really don't, because you're not getting in deliberations on policy or making any decisions. So we can have more than 2 elected officials attend, but it's in January. So if there's any of those discussion items on that list in the email that you want or prefer, we could do that, or just let me know by the 28th. She wanted to try and get an idea, or 25th, excuse me, September 25th. And it's held in January, so it gives plenty of time. The next thing I wanted to mention is y'all had worked on, there was interest in revisiting our fire contract with Fletcher Fire and Rescue. There was a committee of you, the mayor and Councilman Lance, that worked on some suggested discussion points, revisions, looked at another kind of good model contract of another fire department, and put that list together. I shared it about a week or so ago with the fire chief and deputy fire chief, and asked them to share it with their board, and maybe likewise if they could create a committee to look at some of these potential suggested revisions, changes to do that. And I was talking to Trevor earlier, and they're going to have a meeting coming up soon. So hopefully be able to make some headway at making some revisions to the contract. Let's see, then the last thing I just want to mention, the mulch giveaway. They gave 22 22 loads, so they loaded up a lot of mulch, but we still have a lot of mulch left, so if you know of anybody that needs any, we'll probably do another, like, distribution day. And it's convenient, because we have Public Works employees out there who will load it, and they have equipment into your truck,
That's
vehicle.
huge.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, think about how much work that is.
Pitchfork.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, you have to do all
Nobody's gonna
that
show up
work
for
when
that.
you're done, but yeah, right. So, they made a pretty good dent. They'll probably have another, public distribution day. It was 8 to noon, they did it this past Saturday, so, and they were able to grind down everything that was there. There was some big piles.
Do you think it would help if we, I know, because we're doing it multiple times, if we made a big sign, whether just a canvas sign or whatever,
Yeah.
that you put it that says free mulch today? Because some people would,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't hear about it, and if they just drive by and see it, they might.
Right.
And we don't
Make the
really
effort.
care if it's people that are outside of Fletcher that comes to get it, do we?
No, and I was just,
Get rid of
it's
it.
funny you
I think
mentioned,
that sign's a good idea.
I was just thinking about
Free
that
mulch
because.
this Saturday or something.
Yeah.
So Javo and I were trying to think about, or I was getting in discussion of getting rid of them. We do a lot of brush pickup,
Right.
a lot of brush up, so that generates a lot of volume of brush. And what's the most efficient way to dispose of it? Because there's a cost to collect it, obviously, with equipment, personnel, but then there's this whole, what do we do to get rid of it? And it's been a challenge for years and years. We had a pretty good thing set up when Caisson Builders had their tub grinder working, and they're apparently working on a permit, and I guess still are interested in open that back up. But it was more efficient, more cost-effective, just to take it there and dump it,
Right.
and not be dumping it here and handling it again, and because it still costs like $5,000 for that tub grinder to come out
Yeah.
and grind all that down. We may only need to do it 2 times a year, but that's already approaching over our current budget when we were taking the loads into Caisson Builders. So I was gonna approach some of the other municipalities and just see what they're doing with it. I know Hendersonville, they do free mulch, so back to your thing about it's open to anybody, apparently they get enough people that come in and want it to take it off their hands. I don't know how quickly that goes, because that's a lot of ground up. So anyways, it's a challenge, but yeah, to get the sign out, or, because, I mean, heck, someone from, Asheville or wherever, they can come get it,
Driving
take
home
it
from
up.
work and see
Yeah,
this
see
Saturday
it,
free
and,
mulch.
yeah, not just people in Henderson County.
For something like that, is it very complicated to put something on that sign as you drive into the park?
Yeah, no, yeah,
I
we
mean,
could do
I do
that.
free mulch this Saturday, 9
Yeah,
AM or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of people go by that.
Right. That's all I had.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Any other business from council? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Or a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Second?
A motion and a second to adjourn, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We are adjourned.
Mark, I got a question
Yeah,
for you.
yes.
The sign that we put in,
So I want to ask
Yeah,
if they'll meet
gateway
on
sign,
Thursday
yeah.
instead, because I'd rather you be here.
Solar.
I don't really,
Solar, have you gone by at night?
still
I went by,
understand it well.
you could barely
Yeah,
see
yeah.
it. I mean,
I'm glad you give me some feedback on
maybe we
it.
should just buy another set
I
of
don't like it
solar. I
being
know
that
that-
long,
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
I think we're doing.
Or more, something more powerful.